Hello, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing? It's your man Rondell Jordan, aka the Black Swan. I'm doing a quick show today, having to do with the worldview. Right? Um, I'm gonna do a quick show to validate the Bible, to validate the claims that the Bible is about the African diaspora, the people of the native people of this region of the world. We now call it Egypt, but this was also called Kemet in the past, right? Ethiopia was referred to as Cush, right? Libya was referred to as Punt or Put, right? All right, and Egypt also was also known as Mizraim, right? Which all correlates to the story in Genesis, Genesis 10, going into Genesis 11, which is talking about the diaspora. But it says the sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Canaan, we already know, is what? Geographically is the biblical name for the area of Palestine, west of the Jordan River. Okay, the promised land of the Israelites. This is not the Garden of Eden, but the promised land of the Israelites. This is what is being sold to the world, who conquered and occupied it during the later part of the second millennium BC. So 2,000 years or 200 years before Christ, right? Oh no, millennium, 2,000 years before Christ. It is said that the Israelites. Now, there's a lot going on with that because these Israelites are not necessarily the same as the originals. It says even here in the Bible, Revelations 2 and 3, both dresses that there are basically people out here that is very deceptive. They hold a false doctrine. And let's see here. Where is it? Right here. It says, "I know the blasphemy of those who say they are Jews and are not, but the synagogue of Satan." Right, and simply put, is just there was a conversion of Jews in the Caucasian mountains areas in the Caucasian called Khazar. They converted to Judaism to kind of gain a grip on the barbaric rules of the Huns and the barbarians and the Goths and all of that craziness that was going on over here during the Dark Ages. So then, if you notice the right of the bird, the right wing of the bird here, or yeah, the right wing of the bird depends if this the head. This is the Christian, as you see the cross by this sign. I we shall conquer, right? In this sign thou shalt conquer. That's Constantine. And he what? He wrote certain quotes. If any Jew has purchased any circumcised Christian slave or one of another sect than his own, he shall not keep this circumcised slave in the servitude, but the man who has suffered this outrage shall be granted the rights of liberty. Liberty is a right here because most were actually enslaved. Freedom was a privilege, right? If the Jew has bought and circumcised a Christian slave or one belonging to any other religious community, he may under no circumstances keep that circumcised person in slavery. Rather, whoever suffers such a thing shall obtain the privilege of freedom. So we know that a lot of these traditions are rooted into the traditions that are explained in the Bible. You have to really look. That tradition go back into Genesis 34, and the Dinah incident, where the sons of Jacob, right? It says Jacob and answered Shechem, his father, and spoke deceitfully because they defiled Dinah. Dinah simply means that they spoiled her. He spoiled her, he had sexual relationship with her, and that is something that was not supposed to be done to someone in Israel. If you notice here, it says something that should not have done. We cannot do this thing. Ought not to be done. See, had a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing which ought not to be done. All right. So they offered everything. The kingdom, when I say they, Shisham and his father Hamar, offered everything for this woman. He wanted her as a wife. They made a deal deceitfully, and then end up at the end of the story when all the guys were in pain from circumcision. They came back and they plundered and they took everything, all their wealth. They took the oxen, their sisters. They divided, and they just justified it because they said that he treated his sister like a harlot. After they offered them everything that they could, but they tricked. So it teaches you a little bit about the nature of these people when it comes to how they deal with the indigenous people as well. You know, the same thing with Jacob fleeing Laban. The band is stealing off with their possessions, right, and their gods, right? And he didn't understand, you know, he didn't understand, but it ended up being his wife who ended up doing some trickery, right? And they stole their idols, they stole their God. They couldn't understand why they was stealing off, you know, and taking their women. All right, so Rose and let's see here. So, all right, so we're trying to make this really quick. So, all right, so we are looking at the, all right, so Cush. We already looked up Cush, that's Ethiopia, southern part of Nubia, ancient Nubia, first mentioned in Egyptian record of the Middle Kingdom in the Bible, is the country of the descendant of Cush. All right, we got Mizraim, which is Egypt. Okay, it is Mizraim, named for the land of Egypt. Okay, so and then you got Put. Put, they don't have that definition, but Put is Libya and Canaan. So these are all the regions around here: Put, Mizraim, Cush, and Canaan, right here, the region outside. It was no land bridge here. This is the only region where you can actually walk across. This is the reason why the story of Moses, the divide in the sea, you had to have specific knowledge of this region because Africa is completely surrounded by water other than this 100-mile land bridge here. And this is the reason why this region of the world is so important. It's the reason why you have the pyramids and everything here, because this is the epicenter of the world. This is the reason why this area is so coveted. It has nothing to do with religion, but everything to do with its geographic position. All right, this Mediterranean Sea is recently named that Red Sea. This was one body of water called the Great Sea. It surrounds the entire continent of Africa except for here. This is the special knowledge of the division between, and this is the only way, if you're going to do an exodus out of Africa, this is the only way that you can exodus out of Africa on foot, period. So that's what this is from a geographic perspective. It is not literally God divided the seas. Yes, God created a land bridge right here between the great seas. These have since been renamed, and there's a division now there to cut Africa off from the rest of the world, and so that its resources and its people can be exploited and extracted without you know, all of this can be regulated. If you regulate this, you regulated trade going in and out of the lands of Africa. So we're getting into one of the problems that was after the cultivation, after the Moors went up here. All of this compact region over here, it's a lot of wars. You had the Romans, you had the Greeks, you had you know, the Hungarians, the Huns, you had the Slavics, you had a lot of different things. The Vikings, the Genghis Khan. You had the Goths. You had all these different groups of people who really was basically fighting for power. And ultimately, the two groups fighting for power were the religious factions versus the government. And when Italy fell, the only institution left was religion. So Rome morphed into a Catholic Catholic rulership, in which there you control the spirit, you control the man, you control the laws, you control everything. All right, so we see how the traces of Morocco, the Moors, why they went up in here, down in here is where we find Timbuktu. Timbuktu was when Massa Musa trekked across the region and went to Mecca, gave a bunch of gold, and then the Arabs they came back, and the Muslims and came and built epic centers right in this region. Timbuktu was up in this area, and therefore this became a center of trade and education and knowledge that end up spreading itself up through Spain, which the Goths end up conquering Rome, moving towards Spain, end up conquering Spain, the Visigoths. And as the Visigoths, they integrate into societies and they continue to evolve and they learn, and that's exactly what happened. They got in contact with the Moors, and the Moors told them about the world that they had not known before, but was known to the people of the earth, because the people of the earth were building pyramids, which is a knowledge that needed to be traded. It's a mathematics that, of course, people weren't just coming up all over the world by themselves. This was a knowledge being taught in universities, taught by certain African people. That's the reason why you find African remains found in South America, because these certain traditions, the traditions of the drum, the traditions of making clothes out of feather and leopards' skins, tradition of writing in hieroglyphs, the traditions of leaving monuments behind for the future generations, monuments made out of stone and humongous stone structures, the building up of civilizations, right, using these stone structures as a means to prophesize the weather, to predict where enemy attacked are, to congregate the people. These are epicenters of sports and cultural trading. So all over the place, you find pyramids, ancient pyramids everywhere. One thing you also find that the serpent is associated with knowledge, wisdom, and the people of the continent of Africa. All right, the Sphinx, and a lot of other figures, a high percentage of figures, their nose were blown off, and the serpent were blown off of their heads. So therefore, there's certain identity features that are trying to be covered up, in trying to blow the nostril and the serpent, the cobra, off of the heads of these ancient rulers and ancient kings. You see, the tradition is pretty widespread, all right, and it goes back to the original founders of the kingdom of what we now call Egypt, with the kingdom of Nubia and Kemet. So we are establishing that there is specific knowledge being shared here. Let's get into where it says these nations are going to be, it's going to be a diaspora. The families, it's going to talk about the family of Canaanites. The Canaanites were dispersed. Okay. So then if you notice, it's Genesis 10, they're going to talk about the disbursement of the Canaanites, right? And so now you go into 11, you got the Tower of Babel. Now the whole earth had one language, one speak, and came to pass as they journeyed from the east, as they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. Then they said to one another, come, let us make brick and bake them thoroughly. They had brick for stone, they had asphalt for mortar. Now, mortar, that's actually a specific type of masonry, as opposed to stone upon stone. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in heaven. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. This is what we know is a diaspora. This is reality happened with our ancestors, where we are now scattered abroad over the face of the earth. We were tower builders, and now we're now no longer building towers, right? Ancient Commitment towers. Let's see. All right. Yeah. Interesting. Let's see what they got here. All right, so we're gonna have to put pyramids in there. All right, so we notice these towers the tops are in coordinates with the heavens, okay, with the outer space, with the Orion star sequence, right? The Orion belt. So this star alignment is in accordance with, so when they say heaven on earth, you see what I'm saying? Thy art in heaven. This is what it is kind of modeled after. And if you look at the Sphinx obviously has his nose and the serpent blown off his head to hide certain information. It's a lion with a cobra's head because the cobra head can take down the lion, right? A bite of a cobra take down a lion. So yes, the strength of a lion, the disposition of a lion, but the wisdom of the snake, the serpent. These things, both of these things were demonized and covered up. And that is the point what I'm talking about. So when I'm saying we have to look at history and we got to look at things from an African, a free man's perspective rather than a perspective that is being told and dictated to us, since that's the definition of freedom, which is to be able to think and speak and act on your own behalf. So I'm proving factually that the Bible is real and is about the black native inhabitants and who are being conquered and subjects of slavery, right? So let's go back to the Bible. It says, scatter abroad over the face of the whole earth, but the Lord came down. The Lord meaning master, simply meaning authority figure, master, not the supreme being, just someone or something having authority or power, right? A master, ruler, leader, chief, superiority. Came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men had built. Sons of men, as opposed to sons of Jacob, had built. And the Lord said, indeed, the people are one and they all have one language. And this is what they begin to do now. Nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us, who is us, the sons of Jacob, go down in there, confuse their language that they may not understand one another's speech. The Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and they ceased building the city. Therefore, its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth. And from there, the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. Scattered them, right? Confused the language, right? Scattered. It's all about the diaspora. That's what this is not about. It's not about disobedience and the people disobeying God. This is specifically a story about a diaspora. All right. So, with that said, what version of the story have you been told? Okay. So after this story, you go into Abram. Before this story, you go into the fact that Canaan, all right, was cursed. Cursed be Canaan to be what? A servant of servants. He shall be to his brethren. And he said, blessed be the Lord, the God of Shem, right? And may Canaan be his servant, right? May God enlarge Josepheth, and may he dwell in the tents of Shem, right? And may Canaan be his servant. So let's go into the reality of it, okay? Like I said, this is the tents of Shem, this is Josepheth, and this is the Canaanites, the people of the African descent. Why do you say that, Rondell? How did you come to that conclusion? Well, we already defined that when we went through the sons of Ham, right? All right, so the sons of Ham were already established, but Canaan is the one that's being cursed because all of his descendants are the people of the African descent, right? So Ham simply was cursed because he seen his father naked, right? When his father was drunk in the vineyard, it says, now the sons, not the Ark, Shem, Ham, and Josephah, and Ham was the father of Canaan. These three were the sons of Noah, and from these the whole earth was populated, okay? And so the population, earth is populated by men because men are conquerors, and they find women where they go. And Noah began to be a farmer, and he planted, not in this situation, I do know that they had wives, but they populated the whole earth. Now, though Noah began to be a farmer, and he planted a vineyard, then he drank of the wine, he was drunk. All right, and it became uncovered in his tent. And Ham, the father of Canaan, saw the nakedness of his father and told his two brothers outside. That's it. He just saw it and then told it. So we're not going to add more to the story than what it is. He just saw it, and he saw the nakedness simply remains what? Let's look it up. The state of fact of being naked, he made no attempt to conceal his nakedness. It is also used politically as innocence or ignorance, right? To be wandering out naked without protection. But anyway, let's look at it just as it is. They saw the nakedness of his father, and he told his two brothers outside. But Shem and Joseph took a garment, laid it on both of their shoulders, and went backwards and covered the nakedness of their father. To cover the nakedness, right? Cover the innocence, or cover the ignorance of their father. Their faces were turned away, and they did not see their father's nakedness. Nakedness, nakedness. It's always the issue. Even in Genesis with Adam and Eve, it was the issue, nakedness. They hid themselves because they were naked. That has nothing to do with God, y'all. God doesn't care about your nakedness. So Noah awoke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done to him. Then he said, "Cursed be Canaan." That's why they want you to know Ham, the father of Canaan, because this is all about cursing Canaan. And we already went through to be a servant, to enlarge his white brother in the land of his Native American brother. All right. And the Canaan, who we already established, the sons of Canaan, right? Didn't we already establish that? Or is that's established here? The sons of Ham. So he said, "Cursed be Canaan." But look, the sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put. These are African nations. Right? Not the sons of Josepheth, not the sons of Shem, but the sons of, these were Ham. Ham's sons were cursed. Now Abraham, after Noah, guess what you got? The promise to Abram. And Abram, he comes down, right? And he goes to the land of the Canaanites, right? To the Tibber tree, where, remember where Jacob, where we at? No, Jacob ended up burying the fruits of let's actually just go right to it now. Forget about that. So let's go to Genesis. We got it. What is it? Genesis 34, where 35 right here, where he goes up. Jacob said to his household, to all the way, put away your foreign gods that are among you, purify yourselves and change your garment. This white, that means wash. Get rid of, baptize yourself, get rid of your past, your old ways, then rise up and go to Bethel and make an altar there, who answered me in my distress, right? So they gave Jacob all the foreign gods which were in their hands, the Ankh, and the earrings and which were in their ears, and Jacob hid, right? Past tense, them under the terebinth tree. That's 35. So they're telling you that under this tree, the tree is the roots, your roots. And your roots are being hidden from you. And that's the knowledge that leads to the perpetual cycle of life, eternal life. You having children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, great-grandchildren, the perpetual cycle of life. That's what had to do with the nakedness. And all of this is being covered up and hidden. So let's get back. So what I'm saying is that this is the biblical explanation of what is literally going on. These sons of Jacob, they robbed um, Laban of his women and his children and their gods, and he didn't understand. He was just wondering why they stole off. Let's see here. All right. I mean, Jacob even threw. I mean, made his wives go in front of him based off of how much he cared about. I mean, my goodness, it's a lot that you can go through and you can pick apart, but we're not going to do that. But we're just knowing that Canaan is the target. The land of the Canaanites is the target. All right, and they're buying it up, right? And they're tricking people. End up tricking people. Look what they do. We already went through all of this, but they took their sheep, their oxen, their donkey, all that was in sin. They killed them, right? On what? The third day, when they were in pain from the circumcision. They were deceived. So they're talking about a very treacherous, war-like people who were very deceitful, very cunning. And these are certain people that are being welcomed, as in the story, where Humar was willing to offer everything. He was saying, dwell in our land, trade and acquire possessions for yourself, make marriages, give us with us, give your daughters to us, and take our daughters for yourself. They was doing everything. This is showing how humane the natural inhabitants, but they were so stuck up on certain principles. They were mad at that Shechem had sexual relations with Dinah, and I mean they did all of this simply because, like they said, should he be treat our sister like a harlot? And he didn't. They said the man was honorable, that he loved her, that he treated her and spoke kindly to her, that he asked for her to be his wife. You read through these stories and you find that it's describing a certain nature, a racist nature, a divisive nature, deceit and trickery, and all kinds of different things that obviously they're not going to just come out and just tell you straight up. But this is the Garden of Eden. This is the lands over here were set to be the farmland, the garden for these areas over here. Basically, you can go through this languages. So here they speak Portuguese. Here is Spanish. Here, Spanish, English, French, Spanish, English, French. You see what I'm saying? So we're divided by language, right? We're scattered abroad across the face. We're all in Europe. We're all here. We're all over the place, but we're still treated like black people, right? So, but this is the cotton belt. This is the lumber. This is the sugar. This is the corn, the wheat. This is the farming, the horses, the cattle, the horses, the sugar, the all of these different things that were grown out of here were all shipped here, right? And enriched and enlarged Josepheth. And Josepheth basically paid Shem for basically allowing them to use their land. This is the reason why it's called the District of Columbia, right? This is the reason Colombia, Cuba, things that had to do with Colombia. This is Hispaniola. They call it. This together is Hispaniola. This together is Hispaniola. And Hispaniola is the Portuguese and the Spanish together. And all they did was float, landed in La Navidad, Haiti on December 24, 1492. Okay. Right. That's 1493. Let's see. 1492. It was an island in the Bahamas, they say, known by its native inhabitant as Guanahai. Its location is uncertain. He visited Cuba and Hispaniola, establishing a colony in what is now Haiti. The first English settlement in the Americas since the Norse colony almost 500 years earlier. He arrived back in Spain early 1493, bringing a number of captive natives with him. Word of his discovery soon appeared throughout Europe. Columbus' letter on the first voyage is first known document announcing the results of the first voyage of Christopher Columbus that set out in the 1492 and reached the Americas. The letter was ostensibly written by Christopher Columbus himself on February 15, 1493, aboard the Carnival Nina while still at sea. It said the indigenous people he encountered. It says we can actually we're gonna put La Navidad, and we put La Navidad was a settlement that Christopher Columbus and his men established to present-day Haiti in 1492 from the remains of the Spanish ship the Santa Maria de la Immaculée Concepcion. All right. And the La Navidad was the first European colony established in the New World during the Age of Discovery, though it was destroyed the following year. He sailed around the island of Hispaniola on Christmas Eve of 1492 during his first voyage. One of the ships, the Santa Maria, drifted onto a bank and heeled over. After hearing from Gonkanagara that there was much gold to be had in the island, Columbus decided that he would leave the crew on his wrecked vessel and make a settlement on the island and gather the promised gold. He ordered the ship dismantled to provide the building materials for a small fortress. All right, so I have ordered a tower and a fortress to be constructed and a large cellar, not because I believe there is any necessity to an account of the natives. He noted in his journal, I am certain the people I have with me could subjugate all this island, as the population are naked and without arms and very cowardly. All right, so they're scared and they're indigenous, they're naked. All right, so we're going to make these people like us. He said, I'm certain I could kill all of these people, or I can subjugate, I can enslave, I can subdue all these people, bring under domination or control, especially by conquest. I am certain, because they were naked and without arms and very cowardly, they were vulnerable, innocent, as in the story of Genesis. Right? Right? Look what happens in Genesis, right? We're going to try to wrap it up as quick as possible. It's very important to establish a couple things here. First thing in Genesis 2, the first thing they notice, what? The whole land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of the land is good. Bdellium and onyx stone are there. The name of the second rim of Gihon, which goes around the whole land of Cush. We already looked up that. The eldest son of Ham, the southern part of ancient Nubia, descendants of Cush. Right? So we're talking about a nation and a country, Assyria, right? And then the Lord took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden, intended. We're assuming that it was on his free will, but that is to be debated. But the truth is, as they said, he took the man and he immediately, sent him back to the land he was taken. That's how the story concludes. All right, um, now the reason why this man was put in this land is because um, there was no man to till the ground, right? Again, it says the man who he had formed. Formed means configured, visibly shaped, as opposed to the man that a person who has been created, as mentioned in 3 times in Genesis 26 right here, where it says God created man in his own image, and God created him, male and female, both conceived in Genesis 27, and he created them. Then God blessed them, and God said, be fruitful, multiply, fill the earth. So all of this was created 3 times in one sentence. Created, created, created. Whereas here, it says that God has formed man, which is different. Form simply means to, like I said, to configure, whereas create was used right here, and which means to what? To bring something into existence. All right, to produce something. So formed as opposed to created. Not only that, formed man of the dust, not from the dust. Of the dust, like I said, man of the dust, of the dust. There's not a lot of, more that we can, we can give you. There's plenty of evidence out there, but man of the dust, right? The man, look at the man made of dust here, right? With the nostril blown off, with the serpent demonized, blown off, right? Behind the tower builders, right? Who built towers, right? So we're talking about the nostril blown off, man of the dust, right? Now we're going to go into the story where the serpent, who represents wisdom, right, is going to now be demonized, right? The serpent, right? It says that he was cunning. Older, it says subtle, right? But he only said 3 things. He says he's basically enlightening them that they were told that they were going to die. So that's a death threat. If they touch, and it says in the day that you eat it, that was the what was sold, right? So it says they were told that in the day they eat of it. But the tree of knowledge and good of you shall not eat, for in the day you eat of it, you shall surely die. That's the death threat. The day. All right. Now we can say lost innocence and lost ignorance, but that was all lost because Adam lived 930 years, right? So it said, the serpent said 3 things. So the woman, it says, you will not surely die. The God knows that in the day, just in case there's any confusion, you eat of it, your eyes will be open. So let's say, do they die in the day, or are their eyes are open in the day? And you will be like God to know good and evil. So your old you is different than your new. So that's the only reason why you can say it's not a lie. I mean, that it was not a lie if you mean the death of innocence, loss of innocence. So when the woman saw that the tree was good for food, that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree desirable to make one wise, she took of the fruit and ate. She gave also to her husband with her, and he ate. Then the eyes of both of them were open, and they knew they were naked, and they sewed fig leaves together and made themselves coverings. So they applied the knowledge after they've gained it. They knew past tense of the knowledge. And they made fig leaves. Fig leaves, the only fruit associated with this story. The apple comes from the Greek tradition of throwing an apple at your bride. And if she catches it or whatever, it's an acceptance or whatever. So the Greek tradition the Greek tradition, let's see, Greek apple tradition. All right, so the Greek apple tradition is the ancient Greeks did so by proposing to their darlings in a really extraordinary by throwing an apple at their chosen wife. If the woman caught the apple, she accepted the marriage proposal. All right, that's been now changed since to a diamond ring, but these things have their origins. So I just proved to you how the apple got into the story, and as opposed to the actual story having fig leaves, because the Greeks eventually translated the story as well, and then the English translated from the Romans, who translated from the Greeks. So these traditions passed down, and I'm just showing you the logic behind how these stories come together. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. They're telling you that this is a God, this is a master, like I've already pointed out, who is considering himself God. It is a walking individual who's talking. They hid, it says in the cool of the day, and Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence. It's saying that he has a presence of the Lord God among the trees of the garden. So the Bible story is not lying, it's telling the truth, it's just how it's told. Then the Lord God called to Adam and said, "Where are you?" So this God is not omnipresent, he's not in the mind, he is not internal, he is an individual. So he said, "I heard your voice in the garden." Again, confirming that I heard your voice not inside my head, but in the garden. And I was afraid because I was naked, which also is a human attribute, because you cannot hide your nakedness from an omnipotent God. And I hid myself. So he said, "Who told you that you were naked?" So the God is admitting that the information was told by something. All right. "Have you eaten from the tree which I commanded that you should not eat?" Then the man said, "The woman whom you gave to be with me, she gave me of the tree, and I ate." And the Lord God said to the woman, "What is this you have done?" And the woman said to the serpent, "Deceived me." This word used to be beguiled. If you go ahead and you just look up, believing something is not true. But if you look at how the words are changed in these dictionaries, in these Bibles, it's very, very interesting, because as you can see, here it says, right here, the woman gave to me, the serpent beguiled me. Beguiled simply means to charm, right? So it depends on who's telling the story and who decided that they can change that. It beats me. But I just proved to you how the words, even within the same translation, are changed to give you a certain mind frame of this. It's a demonizing of the African people and the knowledge and everything else that comes with it. So, and I ate. So the Lord God said to the serpent, which is a man, "Because you have done this, you are cursed more than all the cattle." So you're going to be made like livestock. Again, Genesis 3, we're talking about a curse on a man. And more than every beast of the field. So it's going to confirm that cattle are the beasts of the field. Cattle are the beasts of burden. There was plowing, right? The beast of burden, the remnant animals with horns and cloven hooves, domesticated, right? For meat and milk, for their bodies, right? And for their produce, right? So that's what we were doing. We were actually sent through the middle passage, just as it is about to say here, "On your bellies you shall go, on your bellies you shall go, and you shall eat dust." Means the chitlins, the ham hocks, the pig feet, the oxtails, and all that kind of stuff, all the days of your life. "And I will put enmity." That is, they are literally placing hostility between the man and the woman through money, through this religious concept that they're starting right now between you and the woman, and between your seed and her seed. So they're telling you your seeds. They're not talking to a snake. They're talking to two people who can procreate. "And he shall bruise your head." He shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. So they're being very slick in their interpretation. But he's actually obviously talking about he shall bruise your head. He's talking to the woman. This should be here, right? "And you shall bruise his heel. I will greatly multiply your sorrow and your conception." See how that's a continuation of this, but they divided that. So this is what I'm showing you, the proof right here in the world. I will multiply your conception, and pain you shall bring forth children. Your desire shall be for your husband, and he shall rule over you. It's the way you conceive, right? Conception is a double entendre, which means to conceive a child, but also has the definition of the way something is perceived or regarded. So it's the way you perceive giving birth has been changed. It says, I will multiply your sorrow. So you're going to give birth in sorrows. You're going to be sorry that you have to heed your husband. You're going to be sacrificing yourself. And this is the reason why we see in our culture such a disparity in the household. I just seen a statistic that suggested that 78, almost 80% of African American children are being raised in single parent homes. So we can debate about whether that number is true or not, but we know that the problem is systemic. It says, Adam, because you heeded the voice of your wife and eat it from the tree, right, of which I commanded you, saying you're not eat, cursed is the ground for your sake, the land. In toil you shall eat of it all the days of your life, for thorns and thistles, like cotton. Do I have any pictures of cotton up here? Right? So in the beginning, we're talking about this guy is cussing these people out, and he's not really speaking life to these people. But it says he is what? It says, behold, the man has become like one of us to know good and evil, confirming what the serpent has said. That's the last thing. He said you weren't going to die, your eyes are going to be open, and you're going to become like God to know good and evil. And now this God is trying to what? At least he put out his hand to take also the tree of life and eat it and live forever. At least meaning with the intentions of preventing something undesirable, to avoid the risk of what? Adam putting out his hand and taking of the tree of life, right? The tree of life. Whereas in the end of it all, in the Revelations, the tree of life, right? The first and the last, the beginning, Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end, right? The tree of life, which bore 12 fruits, each tree yielding its fruit every month, leaves the tree for the healing of the nations, and there shall be no more curse. Also goes on to confirm that, right? Was, the tree of life, right? Blessed are those who do his commandment, that they may have the right of the tree of life. They enter the gates into the city, but outside of dogs, sorcerers, and sexual immoral, and murderers, and adulterers, and whoever loves and practices a lie. Shouldn't throw any stones at these people, right? So it confirms it. The tree of life is a right. Tree of life is a cure. This book is about a curse on the people into servitude. And so with that, I'm going to leave the rest up for another show. I proved that the Bible correlates with our real history. And there's so much more that can be that goes on from there. But I noticed a lot of people are debating minor issues and not really talking about real history and how it relates. And this is the reason why we get a lot of atheists and a lot of people just say forget about it, because it's just all fiction. And what I'm saying that is not. This story is about a man being taken and placed in the garden. This Bible does not say that that these were the first men and women on the planet. They were actually just here to give a specific, allegory statements. It's teaching about the lineage of Cain, why these people were being cursed by the Mesopotamia and this God, right? Who does not respect vegetation, right? But he respect the firstborn, right? This is why in all the stories, the Pharaoh put the orders of the firstborn boys are dying, right? Then King Herod, right? He did the order of the massacre of the young boys, right? In the story of Christ. These are where all this is coming out. The firstborn, right? The first fruit, and their death, their blood, their fat, all right? And that's what this Lord respected. But the Abel offer, he did not respect. See, he did not respect Cain and his offering. So this created enmity be brothers. This is brother and brothers, right? And he's basically saying that you're going to, sin is going to, this is the first where sin is mentioned, and it's desired for you, and you shall rule over. So Cain is going to be a ruler of sin, basically, right? He's being set up, right? And, this individual says, so now you are cursed from the earth, which has opened its mouth to receive your brother's blood. This is what they do in communion, the tradition of drinking wine. Christ turned water into wine, right? And then wine into representing his blood. And then people drink this in tradition of this right here established in Genesis 4. And the reason why is it because it says what? The voice of your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground, from the land. So basically saying that I can hear blood. I'm responsive to blood. You see? Open its mouth to receive your brother's blood. Open its mouth. You see? So these things have a lot to do with reality in a very allegorical perspective. And I have many lessons that I do that will break that down. Fugitive and the vagabond, right? He goes out from the presence of the Lord, right? So this is all proving that this Lord is a God. And they're not even calling it God right now. He's calling it Lord, which means master, as I said. He went and dwelt in the land of Nod. Where is this land? It was east of Eden. So this is another nation. And Cain knew his wife, right? She conceived and bore Enoch, right? Now, Lamech is taking themselves 2 wives. And he's killing men. Right? And this is all before Seth is born, which is 150 years later. Adam ended up having Seth, right, at 150 years, and begot, Seth lived 150 years and begot Enoch. Hold on. It says, created male. He created a male and female, blessed them, called them mankind. All right. 130 years and begot a son in his own likeness at the end of his name, Seth. After he begot Seth, all the days were 800 years, and he had sons and daughters. So all the days of Adam lived were 930 years. So Adam lived 930 years. He did not die in the day, unless you're talking about a lost innocence, and that's it. So Lamech is the son, the father of Noah. And he called and had a son in Noah. Okay, so Noah ended up having the 3 sons. This is how we talk about it. Now, I do not believe these stories are at all real live people. These are allegories that are giving us real live evidence of the past. They just were taken over by the Catholic perspective because they were the ones who were funding all of this going on over here with Christopher Columbus. Christopher Columbus' name is Christopher, right? He landed in Hispaniola, which we called Haiti, December 24, 1492, right? And then he built a fort called La Navidad, when he actually took the people he encountered and as an example of how kind and gentle they were. Christopher Columbus had specific objectives when he came. He believed in a one world order with the Catholic monarchs. Ferdinand and Isabella would fulfill the position due to their vast imperial power and religious conviction to the Spanish monarchs. They were Catholic monarchs to run the last world emperor. See that? The last crusade must take back the Holy Land from the Muslims. This is the tie to Jerusalem, right? The Garden of Eden must be found, established. He thought he was looking for it, and he ended up establishing it. Establish or originate. Christianity must be spread throughout the world. This is from the Book of Prophecies written by Christopher Columbus in the 1501 to 1505, 100 years before King James Bible was published. So how much time did they have to alter, right? How much time Constantine did he learn from, the conquest and the wisdom of their forefathers and ours? All right. So, with that said, that is a lot of information. I hope that we are able to make sense of it all. Again, you see the serpent, the man of the dust, the towers whose tops are in heaven, made of bricks, which is surrounded by cities. Okay? We see it. We see it. These people were brick by brick. All right? These people were tower builders. These people were the architects of society. We know that they built cities that surrounded these towers. All right? And these people are enslaved. Adam was, it says, if you look closely, it says till you return to the ground, for out of you was taken, for dust you are, and dust you shall return. All right. It says the Lord God sent him out of the Garden of Eden to till the ground from which he was what? Taken. Lest he put out his hand and take also the tree of life. He does not want this man to do this. He made tunics of skin and clothed them. This means that you had to be a hunter and a seamstress. And he placed cherubim at the east of the Garden of Eden and a flaming sword, conqueror, who turned every way to guard the way to the tree of life. You're trying to guard the tree of life. You're trying to keep your population stagnant. Adam is not the first man, but the first slave, placed in the garden to till the land, because there was no man in there to till the land. And who was going to do that? I'm not about to do that, right? So that's why God formed the man of the dust. Why? Why? Because there was no man to till the ground. There was no man to till the ground. Okay? So he formed a man of the dust with the nostrils and gave him life. Gave him a purpose, repurposed him. He repurposed, he reconfigured them, shaped them to something like me, from the original inhabitant, the original aboriginals. All right, so that's it for today's lesson. Let me know what you think. Leave your comments. Let me know if you learned anything, learn if you disagree, whatever it may be.